There's no other nice way to put this. Donald Trump and MAGA want to destroy, pulverize, remove from existence things, people, concepts that they find abhorrent, that they find that they can't tolerate, that they are disgusted by. And what they've been focused on, and they've been focused with all your and my taxpayer dollars and public policy, is trying to destroy and pulverize transgender people who are Americans. These are, let me remind everybody, and Trump, these are American citizens who aren't hurting anybody. They're not pedophiles. They are just trying to align their outward appearance to the world with who they feel they are from a gender perspective. That's all. It's not hurting anybody. Okay? To equate them with depraved criminals, which Donald Trump is doing, is itself depraved. And they need our protection because they are a disadvantaged, fragile group in our society. Exactly what Donald Trump's trying to destroy, like the predator that he is. We have a predator in chief who's going after the transgender people, and so is MAGA. You know, they're calling them by the wrong pronouns on purpose. They're calling Congress people who are transgender he, and telling them he needs to use this particular bathroom. When they're not doing that, they're going after the 2%, the 0.02% that's in the military. In our entire military of millions of service people and other people, 4,200 people are transgender. And all they want to do is serve our democracy and are willing to give the greatest sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice. And Trump stands in the way. We talk about Donald Trump's attempt for political purposes and gains to attack and destroy and decimate an entire group of fragile Americans in the transgender community. And we do it on Legal AF. Here's a clip. Let's do the transgender ruling. It was only a paragraph. So let's do that, and then we'll take another break from our sponsors, and we'll come back and talk about all of the decisions, including by federal judges who were appointed by Donald Trump against him on deportation. There's a hearing going on right now while we're on the air with Judge Boasberg. That's eye-popping. We're going to talk about that as well. Let's touch on the transgender thing. We've done a lot of hot takes on it on the Midas Touch Network and even on Legal AF. So let me just frame it, and then I'll turn it over to you. There's only 4,200 people in the military that identify as transgender. It's 0.2% of the military. And as a population, it's not that high either. But it's not about that. It's about a fragile group of Americans in our society that are being dehumanized and being having their dignity taken away from them from an administration, from the bully pulpit of a presidency, who won't rest until he completely destroys the transgender community and the people that occupy it and the people that support it. I mean, it's not just, you have to put it all together. It's Nancy Mace calling a transgender member of Congress he, refusing to recognize the pronouns, and going even further and saying, "Oh, that person's not didn't break any glass ceilings. We've had male members of the House for the last 250 years. You know, the fighting over what bathroom they're using, fighting about whether they can be teachers in public schools or not, fighting about whether these Americans can or who are willing to give the ultimate, pardon me, sacrifice." Can they serve this country honorably and take away their benefits and take away their right to marry and do all of that? You know, Donald Trump has made it a cause celeb because he feels like he gets a lot of political wind at his sail, because it gets his base, whatever is left of his base, it gets them all excited and activated and unifies them against what, and then he whips them up and foments them, and he points them in the direction of the Democrats and tries to win elections. And so why don't you take it from this one paragraph ruling that, of course, Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Kagan opposed, and why they did it, and what happens next?
Look, I mean, the fact that there are 4,200 people in the United States of America who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice and fight for our freedoms and fight for this country. We should be lauding them. We should be there. These are heroes. These are people who are stronger, frankly, than I am. I didn't sign up to be in the military. I mean, I just think people who do that are a special, incredible group of people that I think deserve our praise and our thanks, and are just the most incredible people in this country. It's just unbelievable to be in. And every person that I have met in the military or been friends with or been close to, I'm in awe, in absolute awe. And so these individuals should be celebrated. And instead, what's happening is they're being singled out and they're going to be dismissed. They're going to be dismissed immediately because of this ruling by the Supreme Court, who dissolved a preliminary injunction on behalf of transgender service members. And this was because in California, the district court essentially ruled that this Trump-Hegseth policy was one where that this was discriminatory. It was absolutely discriminatory. The district court, his name is Judge Settle, essentially said that this Trump-Hegseth executive order, this policy, that the finding that transgender identity conflicts with a soldier's commitment to a, quote, honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, is ridiculous, and it's a ridiculous claim. You haven't cited any evidence to support that. There's no new study that says that. There's no evaluation. This was just something that you did with the stroke of a pen in an executive order. The judge also said that the plaintiffs, 7 transgender service members, in contrast to Trump's position, supplied extensive evidence that in the past 4 years of service under Biden, they helped the units they were in, they helped unit cohesion, good order, and discipline. And so that's incredible, right? I'm sure if you were to ask the men and women who served alongside these transgender service people, they would say, these are honorable, incredible people who we want to continue in the military. The judge went on to say this is an expression of raw prejudice against transgender people with no legitimate military purpose. Quote, common sense and binding authority defeat the government's claim that it does not discriminate against transgender people. It clearly does. And the legal basis for these rulings, the Fifth Amendment Equal Protection Clause for discrimination on the basis of transgender status has been violated. There's a First Amendment violation of procedural due process and equitable estoppel based on the reliance of the Biden policy when they joined the Army. They joined the Army since Biden issued this policy saying transgender individuals are welcome in the military, and they relied on that, and now they're going to be dismissed. So that's the equitable or estoppel doctrine. The judge found that each of these multiple claims demonstrated a serious question going to the merits, which is the Ninth Circuit standard for granting a preliminary hearing. And essentially, for equal protection, they held that it's a violation of equal protection, which is binding law in the Ninth Circuit that says, quote, discrimination against transgender individuals constitutes sex-based discrimination for purposes of the Equal Protection Clause because such policies punish transgender persons for gender nonconformity, therefore relying on sex stereotypes. The district court went on and cited a case, Bostock v. Clayton County, which expressly held that it is impossible to discriminate against a person for being gay or transgender without discriminating against them based on sex. That was written by Justice Gorsuch, okay? And therefore, it commits the Supreme Court to this idea that discrimination against transgender people is an equal level or an equal offense to discriminating based on the Constitution on the basis of gender. But the problem is, and the reason it's not exactly perfectly aligned, is that case relied on a statute that was interpreting a statute, Title VII, whereas this is interpreting the Constitution. So, what did the Supreme Court do based on this? So the district court held that the executive order is discriminatory and enjoined its enforcement, right? It went up to the Ninth Circuit, who left that alone, left that in place, and said we're not going to disturb that ruling. And then they went to this emergency shadow docket whatever you call it at the Supreme Court. And I say whatever you call it because this is like Trump's personal, the Supreme Court has become Trump's personal advisory court. It's unbelievable how much he goes to the Supreme Court and how quickly all these things happen and how everything he does just ends up there and they say yay or nay. But they basically undid this hold. They undid this preliminary injunction, and therefore they can be dismissed. These 4,200 transgender service people can be dismissed today. They can be dismissed tomorrow, and I'm sure they will be based on Trump and Hegseth's view of these individuals. Now, by dismissing the preliminary injunction, what they're essentially saying is we don't believe they're going to win on the merits ultimately. So this is just the preliminary injunction. The case still has to go up through the courts and be litigated in full. But by ruling this way, what I don't like is they're essentially saying we don't believe that the plaintiffs have proven or have shown or demonstrated that they are going to ultimately win on the merits. And I don't know why this is, and different commentators and different people have been speculating as to why it is they decided to why they're taking on this case and why they don't think they'll succeed. Is it because the district court entered a nationwide injunction and they don't like the idea of nationwide injunctions? And look, that's been a problematic issue that we've discussed on Legal AF now for a long time. If you remember, Judge Kaczmarek famously ruled that mifepristone, one of the abortion drugs, issued a nationwide injunction on that. This exact issue of can a single judge issue a nationwide injunction is teed up for the birthright citizenship case next week. So is that the issue that they're looking at, and the reason they don't going to succeed? Who knows? Is it that? Is it because when it comes to another possible reason why they don't think the plaintiff's going to succeed might again have nothing to do with how they feel about transgender individuals and whether transgender people are whether this is discrimination based on sex? They could just say, look, it's the military, he's the commander in chief, and we don't scrutinize any decision that has anything to do with this, because this is a primary Article 2 Article 2 function of the presidency, and he absolutely, as the commander in chief, has control over that, and therefore the least restrictive standard of all, the rational basis test, is what applies, and that's all he has to show here. They have to show here. So who knows why they are ruling this way and why they are lifted this injunction? But the sad thing is they're going to suffer irreparable harm because they could be discharged immediately. This is a disgrace, and this is a really upsetting case to me.
Yeah, I was also upset that the three liberal or moderate justices didn't even write an opinion. I mean, it's one thing to say they would not. All it says is they would not have granted the stay. I'm like, okay. I mean, come on. I've seen Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Kagan jump out and write several pages to express this, but look, in the first Trump administration, a very similar but not identical provision was upheld 5-4 by the Supreme Court. So I'm not surprised it's now 6-3. Court's gotten even more conservative. I mean, look, for most of the history of the United States Supreme Court in my lifetime, for 50 years of my lifetime, it's been Republican dominated. We've never had in my lifetime or Karen's lifetime a moderate or Democratic controlled United States Supreme Court. Think about that. It's remarkable. And that's why the gaslighting, where the Republicans and Trump says, oh, it's the Supreme Court. Oh, we're the white underprivileged people that are being discriminated against in this country. And the Supreme Court, you've controlled the Supreme Court every year for more than 50 years. It's not even, this isn't even like a fair fight. It's not even like, this is like the Harlem Globetrotters versus the Washington Generals. This is like 122-0. Okay. We've never had control of the court. So all these people are worried, oh, the liberals and the activists, like I've never, I'm hoping my daughter, I'm hoping your grandchild is going to enjoy a time when we get a 5-4, 6-3 majority the other way, just to balance the odds. I mean, but it's never happened. And I don't want to hope. I hope I don't. Hope what I'm not sensing is that the Democrats are starting to give up there a little bit, because I would have thought they would have written something. But this is our. Oh, somebody's sending an email. This is the problem. The problem is Donald Trump is exploiting the emergency docket, the shadow docket. I thought Kagan would put a stop to it and just deny it, but because the issue's so great, they've gotten in the habit of having all the justices en banc make the decision. It's done with, once again, it's done with very little briefing, no full complete record, no oral argument, no time for deliberation, no time for thoughtfulness, no time to lobby each other over votes. It's just a knee-jerk reflex. Who's a right-wing, alt-right conservative? I am. Who's not? Okay, 6-3, you're done. And Donald Trump knows it. And everything's an emergency. And not everything is an emergency, but it's the way Donald Trump is exploiting this loophole at the United States Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court's allowing him to do it. And there's ways, especially when the cases come out of California and Washington and the Ninth Circuit, like grow some and say denied, denied on the stay. Oh, and then make them go try to get to the full en banc with some sort of letter writing campaign. They got Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Sotomayor, when they're handed a gift, can't return it. They're going to have to stand up and as the sitting justice over a certain circuit and vote no, and just say no, and I'm not sending it over to the full court. But and this policy is even more depraved, even though the first policy had a lot of the first policy didn't even have all the animus that's now been heaped on the transgender community as being immoral, as being dishonest, as being effectively criminals. That's the basis for this policy, because it's out there in comments made by Hegseth and by Trump and others around them. But this one's even more depraved because it's throwing out of the military combat veterans and others who have already transitioned. They already are who they want to be. It's not just people who have a dysphoria and like, well, I wonder, I'm not sure, can I get some treatment? These people are already who they want to be. And just as a last note, one of the plaintiffs, Commander Shilley, is a 19-year Navy aviator who served in 60 combat missions. And they're going to throw her out of the military because she doesn't represent the highest ideals of the military and esprit de corps? Are you effing kidding me? This is bias and animus and hatred for another group of Americans, plain and simple. And if that's okay with you, then just say that out loud. I would rather you just say out loud, I hate transgender people and the way they make me feel, as your justification for trying to destroy their community and their sense of worth, than to give me any other BS about, well, they can't be trusted and they're depraved and they're, who knows, they might take a gun and fire it on another person. We've never had a transgender person in the military friendly fire somebody. It's just disgusting, but that's where we are. It'll continue. There's another case coming out of Judge Ali Khan, who was very hot against the Department of the Department of Defense, and another nationwide injunction case. That one, you and I reported on it several weeks ago. The D.C. Court of Appeals, that was a bad sign then, decided to block her order and allow her injunction to be blocked. And that was the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is much more moderate. So we got that, and they're going to issue their decision any day now. We'll see what that block of the order means. And then the appeal will continue in the Ninth Circuit. And then it may end up, after further development, coming back to the United States Supreme Court. But for right now, if you're in the military or you want to go into the military and you're transgender, your career is over. And maybe 2 years from now, the justices change their mind. You can re-enlist, but you've just dashed the hopes of everybody. We talk about serious, weighty topics. We try to do it in an informative way, in an educational way. We never talk down to our audience. We only talk up. We only punch up. I never punch down. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. Every week, Wednesday and Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network, we do Legal AF. And then, of course, right here on, and also in addition, Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN, you can get our reporting every hour at the intersection of law and politics. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.